All right, so we'll go back in time a little. Beef season 2. What was it about Beef season 2 that made you want to come on board?
I really love to laugh in dark moments. And of course, I had seen season 1, and it was amazingly funny and amazingly dark. And so I was really excited to work on season 2, and even more excited to know that it was going to be a completely different storyline and a completely different Beef, a whole new cast, so we could really create something new while still having that really dark, twisty tone.
Yeah, that was my thing, which I loved about it. It wasn't the same thing.
Completely different.
So you had to create a whole new. What was like the biggest challenge for you, kind of creating the new rules of your editing universe?
There is one thing, we call it the beef rubric, that kind of carried over from season 1. A lot of times we talk a lot about the perspective character of a scene, and that is so important in such a huge ensemble. We need to know who we need to relate to in every single scene because there's so much to get across. So often we will put that perspective character in clean coverage where the other characters are in dirty coverage. So it's kind of this visual cue to the audience on this is their moment. We should be paying attention to what they're feeling, thinking, that sort of thing.
But if you're having these different characters, then from the editing standpoint, you got to pace them differently. Each character will have their own different vibe, or editing vibe.
Yes, for me, besides that, I don't find editing to have a lot of rules. You really trust your instincts, you go with your gut, you cut to what you need for that moment in the story, how to get those things across. We have all of these characters we need to understand, you need clarity. They're making terrible choices, but we need to empathize with all of them and understand why, because that's what makes them interesting. People can make bad choices and you just don't like them, but it's much more interesting if you understand their hurts and the things that are making them make these choices, and it makes you feel something for them. You might not agree with what they do, but at least you have an idea of why they're doing it.
So one of the questions, we have a lot of editing students that watch. Is there any scene that you're most proud of? Something like, this was a little difficult to pull off, or something that was like you'd say, take a notice of it because I really liked how we did this, pull this off?
Yeah, there's a scene in episode 203, and it's a lunch scene in the China Bamboo House, and you have Austin having lunch with Ashley and Eunice. And what's unique about that scene for Beef is the perspective actually changes halfway through the scene. So the scene starts as Austin's scene, and it changes to Ashley's scene. So the editing structure of that was very deliberate and very detailed. So we start on a close-up of Austin, he's clean, and you pull back and you see him sitting between these two women. And that kind of is this visual representation of what's going to happen for the rest of the season. He's caught between his feelings for both. What you'll see in the beginning half of that scene, while it's Austin's scene, we do actually keep him in dirty coverage, and that's so that we see a woman in front of him every single time. So a little bit different than that rubric I was just talking about. What you'll also notice if you watch it carefully is when the women talk to each other in the first half, you never cut from one to the other. You're always relating them through his looks and through shots of him. So we're having them communicate basically through Austin and everything's happening in his reactions, his looks back and forth, the silences. Then when Ashley starts to catch on that Eunice is maybe a threat or something weird is happening, we do that beef rubric where we now go to clean coverage on her, and now it's like, wait, now this is Ashley's scene. And you get to see things from now her perspective of watching. So instead of being in Austin's perspective of feeling caught, we're now in Ashley's perspective of what's happening here.
And that could have been dangerous, like pacing-wise, because it could have pulled the audience out too. You have to do it differently, but did you have to worry about how to balance that to make sure we didn't actually throw off the pacing of the entire scene?
Yeah, it is a very delicate balance when so much of what you need to get across is silent and in looks, and how you make sure that you're catching those things while understanding the dialogue that's happening, sometimes off camera, and keeping, three people sitting at a table interesting and engaging. Yes, yeah. A delicate balance there for sure.